Okay, everybody, Stephen Key. I'm back with Gene Quinn, patent attorney, founder of IP Watchdog, the #1 resource in the world. Anything that has to do with protecting your creativity. Please watch that YouTube segment we just did. But Gene, I have a different question.
Sure.
Okay. I want to talk about software patents.
That's my area of expertise, as you know.
Well, that's why when I read that, I was like, wow, this is really interesting because this is confusing. Software patents is confusing.
You don't know the half of it. It's very, very confusing, and particularly so over about the last 10 years or so. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court has made it less clear. The good news is, if you have a software invention and you're working with attorneys who really themselves understand software, we know how to get you patents.
Okay.
And we can write it up and do it properly. The problem winds up becoming, and it's a historical legacy problem, I think, because the best way to describe what software is and does is by describing it as a method. Unfortunately, the courts do not like that as a method. And the problem is because software is a method, step by step, it does X, Y, and Z. A lot of people early in this once software started becoming a real big market thing, were writing these patent applications who didn't understand software and were writing it like it was a recipe. And there was nothing there. There was no there. They weren't explaining it. They were saying it was like a list of wishes. And you can start out with a list of wishes, but you've got to explain how somebody can actually create it. And there was a lot of bad applications filed. And the tragedy was, I don't think they were bad inventions. I just don't think that the applications were written to capture what was really unique about the invention. So you can get that protection, but it's also not easy. I mean, there's a variety. I could talk about this forever. Like, one of the things you want to really watch out for is you have to be able to articulate what is new in comparison to what has existed that's out there. Now, attorneys stopped writing applications like that as a result of changes in the law of obviousness. Because if I do too good a job telling you what's wrong with the prior art, then my solution seems obvious. So attorneys kind of had to change the way we drafted, but then you got completely away from it. And what winds up helping tremendously in these software applications is explaining why it matters. Is it better, stronger, faster? Does it use less energy? Does it store data better? Is it more easily retrievable, more easily searchable? What does it do that's better? Now, if you can't say that, you probably don't have an invention. And that may be some of the legacy problem here, but it's become a fine mess. But you are seeing people who know what they're doing getting protection. And I was looking at cases from the Federal Circuit the other day, and there was another one that was upheld. And that's a big deal when you see that. So people who tell you can't get protection in software, it's not true. It's not easy, but it can be done.
Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do if I have a product like that, an invention that deals with software, I need to find a patent attorney that specializes in this. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. Your odds are going to go way up,
Okay.
way up. The other thing too, I think you need to do somewhere along the way. So I'm an electrical engineer by training. And one of the things that we had to do in electrical engineering, and today, if I went to school, I'd be a computer engineer. That just didn't exist as a degree back when I was in college. You were an electrical engineer with a computer focus, but you had to take logic courses and understand the software project like an engineer, and you also had to engineer for what could go wrong. You've probably seen the joke, where remember we used to have the DVDs and CD-ROMs come out from the computer, and people would use that as a coaster. It's probably apocryphal, but you got to assume people are going to misuse your invention, and how do you engineer it so that if they're going to misuse it, it doesn't create any harm, and hopefully you make it more difficult for them to misuse, right? That's, I always have said that, particularly in this software space, the invention resides at the edge of Murphy's Law, because whatever can go wrong will go wrong. And if you have a solution that prevents that, then you've got something, you got an innovation. And you see that now with cybersecurity related inventions, the virus scanning and detecting, all of that kind of stuff is patentable because it addresses a real problem and a real concern that people have.
How important is it to tie the software to hardware?
Well, I think it's very important. That once upon a time was the only thing you needed to do. So what people started doing is they would describe it and say, "Oh, and then run it on a computer." It can't be just run it on a computer, and it can't. But yeah, the more tangible you can make this.
All right.
So I like to think of these as systems. What's there? You're going to have a database. You'll have interfaces. The graphical user interfaces can be protected. Um, so look at this as a holistic system and describe it as a holistic system, and you're going to get much, much further.
Okay. Interesting. Do I need to write some code to put that in application? Is that helpful or not?
Well, it won't hurt. A lot of folks still, most patent attorneys, I don't think are including code. Sometimes what they do is we include what's called pseudocode. So it's not actually the code that the computer, but it kind of like is sort of like, think of like, how would you outline the code, or condense it, or provide an executive summary, or maybe you'll include like a particularly important routine so that people can understand it. But if you can code it and have some code in there, or the pseudocode that is descriptive, that does help, goes a long way. What also helps, and people, they still laugh at me about this a lot of times, um, pictures, software, pictures are flowcharts. Flowcharts and schematics are worth their weight in gold. They just are, because if you create a flowchart, what you're doing is you're approaching the problem block by block by block.
Right.
And you're treating it like an engineer. I'm going to solve this problem, then I'm going to solve this problem, then I'm going to solve that problem. And then you put it all together.
Okay.
And it's just a different mindset, because a lot of times with coders, they just sit down and start coding. And I had years ago, Stephen, I had somebody tell me they needed me to get them a patent. I'm like, okay, well, where's the documentation? Oh, it's documented in the code. And I'm like, they had 2 million lines of code. And I'm like, so you want me to read 2 million lines of code to figure out? I was like, that's not documentation. That's like trade secret. Nobody's ever going to find it. Nobody's ever. So you need to make sure that as you're doing this, and if you are going to sit down and code, you're keeping track of it
Okay.
separately from the code. And yeah, document it in the code so that whoever follows up can understand what happens, and it needs to be tweaked, or they can go right to that routine and see it. But that's not how you're going to help your patent attorney, not how you're going to get to yes from an examiner.
Okay. So when someone says, "Hey, I have a new app,"
Yeah.
what do you tell them?
Well, the apps are somewhat difficult sometimes. It depends upon what it is, because you're not going to get protection on doing something on a phone or computer that has been done in the real world. And now, rather than doing it like in a ledger, you're just able to do it on your phone with an app. The app makes it incredibly useful and convenient, but just think of it as translating. So if you're translating something from a tangible document, real world ledger, to a computer, that's not what we're going to get you protection on. It has to do something different or unique, or something that you could not have done on paper. Like, for example, if you're one of the cases over the last 10 years or so that the Federal Circuit said was okay, it related to software that was being used to intercept missiles. And the missile constantly changing trajectory in relation to being tracked, and how do you track it and get it to detonate at the missile before the missile lands, right? You think of maybe like a Patriot missile type thing, but this even was on, it was on an airplane, it was on like a fighter jet. So you have moving frames of reference, difficult physics, difficult math, but the goal was essentially like no different than skeet shooting. Here's an object, I want to intercept the object, right? So how do you go about doing that? That's a real problem that you couldn't possibly solve in pen and paper. And if that's what you have, now you have something really interesting and exciting. And I think so with the app situation, it can be difficult. Now, that's not to say that you shouldn't at least file a provisional application. Because, you know, when you have something that's potentially valuable, treat it like you can get a patent on it, file your provisional, and then if somebody becomes interested enough to buy it or license it from you, now you've established at least the ability to get a patent. And you may not ever get a patent, but it gives you some protection.
So getting back to the first question, I need a good patent attorney that understands software, specializes in software patents.
Yeah.
How do I find that person?
Well, I mean, that's, you know, that's a good question, because there's probably a lot of people out there that, you know, say that they can do this and they don't necessarily do it. What I would do is look to see whether the attorney you're working with or want to work with has gotten any issued patents dealing with software. And then also look at their degree. And that's not perfect, because I do know some people who do software that, you know, they're just technologists and they've gotten into this and they have a facility for it. And, you know, their degree was in maybe civil engineering or mechanical engineering, and that maybe it doesn't scream software. But if you find somebody who has gotten patents for people in software and they're an electrical engineer or they're a computer engineer, that's, you know, you should have some level of confidence there that they can help you.
Great, Gene. Thank you so much.
Sure, no problem. Good luck, everybody.
Thank you. You guys, Gene Quinn, once again, IP Watchdog, check it out. Gene knows what he's doing. Also, we also mentioned, if you want to write a provisional patent application and you want it to be fantastic and you want to learn all about it, look down below, Smart IP. It's a wonderful program created by the famous Gene Quinn.
Well, thanks, Steve. And the Smart IP actually, if you do have software, it helps you with those applications as well. It's not just intended for tangible stuff.
It's wonderful. Gene, thank you very much for coming on and sharing everything with our audience, and we'll have you back again. So thank you.
Great. Thanks, Stephen.
If you're not sure about this and you need a little help, please give us a call. We have a program called Gateway where we do everything for you. We know how to reach out to the right companies. We know how to reach out to the right people. We know how to make sure your marketing material is communicating correctly so they can look at it, they can make good decisions. We know what questions they're going to ask, and we can be prepared for those questions in advance. And when that licensing agreement comes over, we can help make sure it's a fair and balanced licensing agreement so everybody's happy. Basically, we're doing all the work for you. It's our program called Gateway, and if you need help on any of this, please pick up the phone, call us, and let's see if Gateway is right for you.